Hello once again, Guardians. Today we're going to be talking about some of the exotic changes that are going to be coming with the Edge of Fate release. Let's not waste any time and go ahead and jump straight into it. First off, we're going to start with Titans. The first one that we have is Heart of Inmost Light. The first note is that maximum PvE melee damage bonus will be increased from 20% to 50%, and it now increases the damage of unpowered and glaive melee abilities. There's something about glaive melee abilities technically counting as an unpowered melee instead of weapon damage. That was mentioned earlier up in this TWID, but we're just going over the exotic changes. We can make a separate video on all the different changes with glaive melees and ability changes and things like that. Next up for Titans is the Peregrine Greaves. Shoulder charge ability impact damage bonus against non-champion, non-tormentor, and non-miniboss targets has been increased from 363% to 400%. I'm not exactly sure why that was such a specific number before, but hey, we'll take more damage with it. Synthoceps and Spirit of the Synthoceps. Melee damage bonus is unchanged, which is at 165% right now, and melee damage bonus is no longer decreased when used with Combination Blow, Stylish Executioner, and Glaive Melee. This is more of a thing that affects hunters, not in particular to Titans, but the glaive melee is really nice. Damage bonus is still decreased against players when used with Lightning Surge. So obviously, a Spirit of the Synthoceps Warlock with Lightning Surge can't just run everyone's fade with it. Wishful Ignorance. Maximum PvE Frenzy Blade melee damage bonus has been increased from 100% to 200%. And maximum PvE Flache Storm melee damage bonus increased from 50% to 200%. Both of these buffs are in an attempt to make Wishful Ignorance more usable in PvE, but I'm still curious to see how it's actually usable. Just with the damage wasn't really the concern with it. It was more just the fact that other exotics kind of serve its role better. So I'll be curious to see what it feels like in actual play, but overall, I do like that it's at least getting buffed. Next up is Wormgod Caress. Maximum PvE melee damage bonus has been increased from 275% to 400%, and melee damage bonus is no longer decreased when used with Roaring Flames or Glaive Melee. This is great for Solar Titans, but it also keeps its crown of being the highest damage melee exotic for Titans. Plus, with no longer getting a decrease with its damage bonus to glaive melees, that's a big thing. And I think that there's going to be a lot of potential glaive melee builds now, since they work with a lot of these melee exotics. Next up, we have the Crest of Alpha Lupi. Crest of Alpha Lupi is just straight up getting additional effects. The first one reads, sustain damage while behind a barricade triggers another smaller healing pulse, and then healing your allies grants barricade energy. So this goes hand in hand with being able to play as a support Titan role. Now, whenever you actually heal people, you'll be rewarded with barricade energy, and then also if you continue to take damage behind a barricade, you will continue to trigger healing pulses. So you can really actually hunker down and play as a more support Titan role. Next up, we have the Mark 44 Stand-Asides. These now obviously continue to work with an Arc Titan build in particular. Sprinting with Juggernaut active periodically grants you a stack of static charge. It doesn't say what static charge does, it just says that you get a stack of it. And then also sprinting while amplified creates an area behind you that grants allies speed booster. It's a strange effect. I'm not really sure how good it's going to be, but it's more just interesting that it's going to be doing this now. Next up is the Path of the Burning Steps. Now, it says increases solar weapon damage and solar ignition damage based on the number of stacks of Roaring Flames you have. Roaring Flames number 1, 2, and 3 grants 10, 15, and 20% bonus solar weapon damage and 5, 10, 15% bonus ignition damage. These do stack with surge mods. Path of the Burning Steps now also reduces the duration of suspend, slow, and freeze effects applied to you. So it's no longer just an anti-stasis exotic. It now does a little bit against Strand as well. Next we have Abeyant Leap. This one's pretty cut and dry. It just increases the duration of suspend applied by enhanced Drenger's Lashes. That's all it does, but it did kind of need a little bit of a buff, I thought, but if you're using the normal version of Abeyant Leap, like not the spirit of it, whatever it's called, you being able to proc Woven Mail whenever you get a suspend is still really good. I didn't think it needed a huge buff, but it definitely needed a little nudge, so I like this change. Next up is Actium War Rig. Auto rifle or machine gun final blows increase their stability, ammo generation, and damage. Stacks up to 10 times, higher stacks expire more quickly. I definitely like this one, especially with us having such a great Actium War Rig season, along with Bolt Charge and Thunderlord in particular. And the thing that they're going for with this is Wormgod Caress, but for machine guns and auto rifles. This is a really interesting change, especially with Actium already being pretty good just overall. This definitely gives it a lot of potential to be really, really good. And then next up is the Spirit of Alpha Lupi. The only real thing that changed with this is healing your allies grants class ability energy. So obviously you don't get that extra healing burst that you do with the normal Crest of Alpha Lupi, but you do at least get the healing your allies grants class energy. Lastly, for Titans, we have the Phoenix Cradle. This has updated VFX on sunspots, while the user has Phoenix Cradles to look more clearly supportive to allies. Added additional effects. Dealing sustained solar weapon damage in a sunspot extends its duration. Providing solar buffs to allies has the chance to create a sunspot at your feet. This goes hand in hand with kind of making Alpha Lupi a more support-centered exotic, and Phoenix Cradle now having a more clearly defined role, along with the sunspots themselves being a lot easier to tell versus, just a normal sunspot versus a Phoenix Cradle sunspot, which is a lot better. But that's going to wrap it up for Titans. Now we can go ahead and move on to Hunters. The first one we're going to talk about is Athrys' Embrace. The only thing that's changed with this is PvE weighted throwing knife damage bonus has been increased from 200% to 300%. Not much, but at least it's a little bit of a buff for it, for PvE sakes anyways. Next up is Liar's Handshake and Spirit of the Liar. For this, PvE basic melee and arc melee damage has been increased from 200% to 400%. So it seems like to me, Liar's Handshake and Spirit of the Liar got a just complete buff. But we'll have to see how much of a difference this ends up making, especially with melee-specific builds for the Edge of Fate stat versions. Next up is Ophidia Spathe. Maximum PvE throwing knife damage bonus increased from 100% to 200%. Same thing as Athrys'. At least it's getting a PvE damage bonus. And then Triton Vice. PvE glaive melee damage bonus increased from 100% to 200%. So similar to a couple other melee-centered exotics, it seems like glaives are going to be a really big focus for all these types of builds now. Next up, we have the more in-depth reworks. The first one being with the Dragon Shadow. This now passively increases weapon stability and ready speed. Dodging reloads your equipped weapon, no longer reloads holstered weapons, and activating your dodge ability grants the following effects for a short time. Increased stability and handling, increased move speed, increased sprint, slide, and ADS strafe speeds, and increased class stat. So the Dragon Shadow is going to be a really, really good overall PvP-centered exotic or just a dodge-heavy type of build, no matter what. It's not a big deal to me that it doesn't reload every single weapon, even if it's holstered. To me, it granting all this move speed stuff, strafe speed, class stat, and weapon stability and ready speed, it seems like just an overall really, really good stat boosting exotic, sort of similar to Ophidian Aspect for Warlock, but just even better. Next up is Speedloader Slacks. They just adjusted the tight fit perk, so now dodging reloads all weapons and grants increased handling and reload speed for you and nearby allies. While this buff is active, additional dodges increase the strength of the buff and refresh the timer. Dealing sustained damage grants class ability energy. So this does a little bit to actually make it a bit different than the Dragon Shadow, where they both reloaded all weapons on dodge and granted increased handling and reload speed. But now this does a little bit to make it a more PvE centered exotic, whereas before it was literally just, we have Dragon Shadow at home. Next up will be the Mask of Bakris. The biggest change with this, first of all, is that effects are not active when either an Arc or Stasis Super is equipped. They reworked Light Shift, no longer provides a non-stacking surge damage bonus. Now it grants a 10% damage for eligible weapons. This is Stasis weapons, Arc weapons, and Lord of Wolves per stack. This stacks up to 3 times. While active, weapon final blows grant class ability energy. So you can definitely get a lot of surging potential with both Stasis and Arc weapons, and the Lord of Wolves edition is a definitely interesting one that I'm honestly pretty excited to try. Next up is Khepri Sting. Removed automatic smoke bomb activation when using a melee attack, and removed the true sight when dealing damage with a smoke bomb. Now they added killing weakened targets creates a burst of weakening smoke and returns smoke bomb energy. They wanted to make it a bit more useful and not just a niche PvP exotic, so they definitely opened up a lot more opportunity for build crafting hooks. Next up is Oathkeepers. For this, they increased the maximum damage bonus from 150% to 200%, and it now provides more of the total damage bonus earlier in the overdraw. So you don't have to wait as long for the max overdraw damage. Now you can let it go a little bit quicker. That's just better for in terms of speed and usability for it. And then last, and a little bit least, is Blight Ranger. Blight Ranger says, fix an issue where cancellation damage was not consistently scaling based on voltaic mirror progress. Adjusted voltaic mirror meter behavior. Now requires 25% less reflections to reach maximum. Fills more evenly, and blocked melee attacks now count as a reflection. Maximum cancellation damage increased by 50%. This is in addition to the fix above. Minimum cancellation damage increased by 150%. Now applies blind before dealing damage. Updated visuals, audio, and timing of the blinding shockwave to better reflect its impact. To me, it's still too weird of an exotic to really be able to use effectively in a lot of build crafting, but I am definitely curious with the increased damage, both the heavily increased damage minimum and the increased maximum damage plus the blind effect. Maybe it'll be really useful, but we'd have to see it in test. But that's going to wrap it up for Hunters. Now let's move on to Warlocks. The first one with Warlocks is Winter's Guile. This one's pretty basic. It's just the maximum PvE melee damage bonus has been increased from 275% to 400%. And that's going to wrap it up with that one. Next up, we have Starfire Protocol. Starfire Protocol now also activates on radiant damage. Increase the fusion grenade energy gain from dealing damage from 2.5% to 5%, and reduce fusion grenade energy gain from final blows from 20% to 15%. So, this is going to work a lot better with hitting targets rather than just straight eliminating them individually. I'm a little curious to see how this ends up working, but double the amount of fusion grenade energy gained from just hitting targets, especially with being able to build directly into grenade damage with the new stats. This one could be really, really good going forward. We'll have to see. Next up is the Wings of Sacred Dawn. For the Wings of Sacred Dawn, combatants are less accurate towards you while Tome of Dawn is active. This is similar to Manticore's effect. While a Solar Super is equipped, Solar Weapon Final Blows now grant restoration and reload your stowed weapons. This one's really interesting, just with being able to grant yourself restoration and reload your stowed weapons while you're flying with Wings of Sacred Dawn. But again, this is one of those where it's like, it's really cool, but I'm curious to see how it actually does in potentially higher end content, especially with you not being able to hide behind cover and things like that while you're flying in the air. But there's definitely some times that I could definitely see this being useful. Next up is Felwinters Helm. For Felwinters Helm, they added powered melee damage weakens targets. This applies to 15% weaken. Weaken effects applied by the burst via melee or finisher blows are unchanged. Not much to really say about this one. It's just that powered melee damage now weakens targets, and it's a 15% weaken, so it's a little bit weaker than say like a Night Stalker and its Void Anchor super. Next up is Promethium Spurs. This is a really weird one that's always been kind of strange and not really used that much, so let's see what they got. Rework the perk Embers of Light. While a solar super is equipped, weapon defeats grant class ability energy, and weapon defeats in a rift grant a different solar verb depending on the rift. While in a healing rift, weapon defeats create a pulse that grants radiant to you and nearby allies. While in an empowering rift, weapon defeats instead grant cure to you and nearby allies. I honestly really like this change. I'll be really curious to see how it looks going forward, but with the weird kind of combo rift and just how odd it was to try to get the combo rift off that Promethium Spurs gave, I'm really excited to actually try out healing rifts that grant radiant to you and nearby allies, and an empowering rift that actually can heal you on defeats can be really good for potentially lower end activities or even higher end activities, since you just get straight weapon damage increase. But again, one of those where it's like, we'll have to see how it actually ends up panning out once you get into it. Next up is one of my friend's favorites, the Geomag Stabilizers. Reduce super energy granted by ionic traces to 4%. It was 7%. Return sprinting to top off bolt charge. Decreased bolt charge stacks required before sprinting will grant additional stacks from 6 to 5. Decrease the amount of time required for sprinting to start granting bolt charge from 2 seconds to 1. Increase the rate bolt charge is granted while this effect is active from 1 every 1.5 seconds to 1 every 0.33 seconds. So with this, it seems like they're going less into the actual super generation that it does and more into generating bolt charge like crazy by sprinting. So kind of almost like Storm's Keep, where it just gives bolt charge just by doing a certain thing, but with still having to use abilities to proc bolt charge. I'm curious to see how useful it really is, but the bolt charge rate that you get is so ridiculously high that it might just kind of offset it. And especially for a lot of activities where you might be running in between a lot of things, Geomags will still be really, really fun to use. So I'm curious to see how they end up working. And then lastly, we have a big one, the Boots of the Assembler. For the Boots of the Assembler, Noble Seekers no longer spawn in waves and instead spawn at a constant rate based on fireteam size. Average number of Noble Seekers produced per 8 seconds is unchanged. It will produce 1 per ally in that time period. Noble Seeker tracking range changed to 40 meters always. It was kind of weird and was from 20 to 40 based on time alive, so it would actually increase the range based on how long the rift or the well was down. Noble Seekers will prioritize allies who have not been healed in the last 8 seconds. Noble Seekers can now target allies standing in the rift producing them. Noble Seekers will not target an ally more than once every 4 seconds. Noble Seekers will not detonate when passing near an ally they are not targeting. They will still detonate if they make direct impact with an ally they are not targeting. They no longer grant extended rift duration on Noble Seeker impact with allies. Instead, grants class ability energy on Noble Seeker impact with allies, and this scales based on fireteam size. These are a lot of changes to the Boots of the Assemblers, but I think that I really like the changes with them. First of all, with the just increased consistency with the actual Noble Seekers themselves, plus them prioritizing people who have not been healed and them giving class ability energy so that you're able to put more rifts down and really go into that support role without just saying put on speaker sight. It's just better. So definitely giving a lot more options to play a support role for a bigger fire team, and I really like the option for it. So we'll have to see how it goes. But that's going to do it with all of the exotic armor changes. What do you guys think about all of them? Do you like them? Are there ones that you don't like? Let me know in the comments. Remember to like the video for more. I'll see you guys on the next one.